His mistress DM'd me their photos with the caption, "He's leaving you and taking the money." By the time she hit send, I'd already emptied every account in his name. Then I forwarded everything to his business partners. They froze his assets before dessert. His scream when the card declined? The sweetest sound of my life. The notification lit up my phone at 3:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. A name I didn't recognize. Sadie, with a message request that would shatter the carefully constructed facade of my life. I remember staring at those preview words with a strange detachment. "He's leaving you and taking the money." My thumb hovered over the screen, time suspended in that moment before I let the bomb detonate. I didn't open it immediately. Instead, I looked up at the framed accolades on the wall of my home office. Hudson Mercer, founding partner, legal genius, community pillar. My husband's smiling face in every photo, and me, Alice Mercer, the supportive shadow just beyond the frame's edge. 15 years of marriage, 13 years building Mercer Legal, from a desperate dream in our garage apartment to the most sought-after boutique firm in the city. Before we continue Alice's journey of discovery and revenge, I want to take a moment to connect with you all. If stories of women reclaiming their power from those who underestimate them resonate with you, consider subscribing. It's completely free and helps our community grow. Now let's dive in. The message could wait 5 more minutes. I calmly opened another browser tab, entered our banking credentials Hudson didn't even know I maintained, and transferred every last cent from our joint accounts to the separate one I'd established 6 months ago when the first unexplained dinner receipt fell from his pocket. When I finally opened Sadie's message, I wasn't surprised by the intimate photos or her smug certainty. I was only surprised by her timing. By the time she hit send, I'd already emptied every account in his name. Some people might call it paranoia, but I call it survival instinct. For 13 years, I'd built Hudson's legal practice alongside him, though you'd never know it from the firm's letterhead or website. I scheduled his clients, researched precedents until my eyes burned, drafted preliminary documents, kept the books immaculate, and maintained our home as the perfect entertaining space for wooing potential clients. All while Hudson collected the accolades, the handshakes, the professional respect. "You're the backbone of this operation, Alice," he'd say, kissing my forehead like I was a child who'd brought home a good report card. Not a partner. Never an equal. I still remember the night we celebrated the firm's first major victory. A complex civil case nobody thought he could win. While Hudson accepted congratulations from the senior partners who'd taken a chance on him, I circulated with champagne flutes and memorized the names of spouses and children, making mental notes about client preferences and potential conflicts. I was building a database in my mind while building a reputation for being the perfect hostess. "You should hire an assistant," I suggested once during our 3rd year when the workload became crushing. Hudson laughed, his hand warm against my cheek. "Why would I pay someone to do what you already do so perfectly, honey? We're building our future together." Our future. That phrase became the carrot dangled before me through missed anniversaries, cancelled vacations, and the gradual postponement of the family we'd planned. First until the firm was stable, then until he made partner, then until they opened the downtown office. Always tomorrow, always after the next big milestone. The first sign something had changed wasn't the late nights. Those were nothing new. It was the subtle shift in Hudson's scent when he returned home. The faint trace of something floral beneath his cologne that wasn't from any product in our bathroom. Then came the unexplained weekend conferences that appeared on no industry calendars. Small changes in routine that might seem innocuous to anyone else but glared like warning lights to someone who'd spent 15 years studying his habits. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that successful marriages required trust. Then I noticed the first financial discrepancy. It was just $200 at first. A cash withdrawal that Hudson hadn't mentioned, unusual since we discussed all major expenses. Then another $350 the following week. Small enough to explain away, large enough to create a pattern. My accounting background, the very skill that had helped Hudson establish his firm with immaculate books, now turned toward tracking these unexplained leakages from our shared future. Every night after Hudson fell asleep, I'd slip into the home office and meticulously document each suspicious transaction. A dinner charge at the Westlake on a night he claimed to be working late at the office. A jewelry purchase from Allison's that never materialized as a gift for me. Hotel charges in our own city. The growing spreadsheet became my secret shame, evidence of either my husband's betrayal or my own paranoid breakdown. "You seem distracted lately," Hudson mentioned one evening as I prepared dinner, the chopping knife striking the cutting board with more force than necessary. "Is everything okay at the volunteer center?" The volunteer center. My supposed focus now that the firm had grown enough to hire actual paralegals and assistants. The convenient explanation for why I wasn't needed at the office anymore, though I still maintained their financial records remotely. Hudson had successfully transitioned me out of his professional life while keeping me tied to his finances. "Everything's fine," I lied, matching the practiced ease with which he delivered his own untruths. "Just thinking about the Blackwell dinner next month. It's a big opportunity." His eyes lit up at the mention of Blackwell Industries, the potential client that could cement Mercer Legal's reputation in corporate law. "That's my girl, always thinking ahead. This account could transform everything for us." As if we were still a team. That night, while reaching for Hudson's suit jacket to take it for dry cleaning, I heard the distinctive buzz of a second phone. Not his regular iPhone that occasionally contained work texts I was allowed to see, but something else hidden in his interior pocket. I froze, heart hammering against my ribs as my fingers traced the outline of the device. Just as quickly I withdrew my hand, leaving the jacket untouched. Some truths require careful preparation before confrontation. The following evening I volunteered to pick up dinner while Hudson worked in his study. Instead of driving directly to the restaurant, I parked across the street, called our landline and asked for Hudson. "He just stepped away, Mrs. Mercer," our part-time housekeeper answered. "Would you like me to have him call you back?" "No need," I replied, watching through binoculars as Hudson emerged from the house, phone pressed to his ear, walking toward the garden where he thought privacy awaited. I couldn't hear his words, but his body language told the story. The intimate lean, the occasional laugh, the way his free hand gestured as if touching someone. 20 minutes of watching my husband perform affection for someone else was all the confirmation I needed. I drove to the restaurant, ordered our usual Tuesday meals, and returned home with a pleasant smile fixed firmly in place. That night, as Hudson slept beside me, I made my decision. There would be no confrontation, no tearful demands for explanation or promises to change. Instead, I would do what I'd always done best. Work silently behind the scenes, gathering information, preparing documents, and building a case. Only this time, Hudson would be on the receiving end of my meticulous attention to detail. The Blackwell dinner was exactly 4 weeks away. I had learned patience during 15 years of marriage to an ambitious man. I could wait another month to serve the coldest dish of all. The morning after my garden surveillance, I woke before Hudson and slipped into my home office with a cup of coffee. The Blackwell dinner preparation gave me the perfect excuse to dig deeper into our finances. After all, the firm needed to appear impeccably stable to land this client. Logging into our premium credit card account, I scrolled through recent transactions, something catching my eye that I hadn't noticed before. A $4,200 charge from Tiffany & Company 3 weeks ago. My birthday had passed months earlier. Our anniversary wasn't for another 2 months. I checked my jewelry box that evening. No blue box awaited me there. Whoever wore the gift from Tiffany's, it wasn't the woman who'd helped build Hudson's success from nothing. The charge was followed by weekend hotel bookings in nearby Oak Ridge, a luxury resort area just an hour away, and restaurant charges for 2 at places I'd never visited. I printed everything, creating a detailed timeline in a password-protected file on my personal laptop. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was financial. My contributions to our shared life were literally funding Hudson's escape from it. I remembered how I'd once joked that I knew the firm's accounting better than Hudson did. "That's why I married the smartest woman I know," he'd responded, kissing my forehead. The memory burned now as I discovered a pattern of increasing withdrawals from our joint savings. $500 here, $800 there. All in cash that couldn't be easily traced. The following Tuesday, while Hudson attended court, I called in sick to my volunteer position and spent the morning searching our home. Years of organizing Hudson's life had taught me his habits, his hiding places. The locked drawer in his bedside table yielded nothing unusual, just the expected collection of cufflinks and watches I'd given him over the years. The false bottom in his closet shoe rack contained only the predictable passport and birth certificate. I was about to give up when I noticed something odd about his golf bag, untouched since the previous season. Hudson hadn't played in months, claiming work was too demanding. The bag felt heavier than it should. In the side pocket, wrapped in a hand towel from the Oak Ridge Grand Hotel, I found a small leather notebook. Inside were handwritten calculations, projections of living expenses, investment returns, and what appeared to be a division of assets. My name appeared nowhere in these careful plans. Instead, there were notes about clean extraction and untraceable funds. Most disturbing was a notation beside several client account numbers, available liquidity before transfer restrictions. My hands trembled as I photographed every page before returning the notebook exactly as I'd found it. He wasn't just planning to leave me, he was planning to steal from his clients. 2 days later, Sadie's message arrived. I'd been preparing a grocery list for the Blackwell dinner when my phone chimed with the notification from an unknown Instagram account. The preview showed just enough to freeze my blood. He's leaving you and taking the money. Thought you should see what your husband's been up to. After securing our accounts, I finally opened the full message. There were 5 photos. Hudson and a young woman with sleek dark hair, wrapped around each other in various states of undress in what I recognized as the Oak Ridge Grand's premier suite. His expression in each image held something I hadn't seen directed at me in years, pure, unfiltered desire. The woman, Sadie, wore the diamond pendant I'd seen charged to our account. I'm 28, fertile, and not afraid to go after what I want, her message continued. Hudson's tired of waiting for you to give him children. We're starting fresh with the money he's been setting aside. He's just wrapping up some client matters first. You can make this easy or difficult, but he's already chosen me. The phone slipped from my fingers onto the kitchen tile, screen shattering in a pattern that matched the breaking inside my chest. A sound escaped me that I didn't recognize, part sob, part animal keening, as I slid down against the refrigerator to the floor. 13 years of sacrifice, of being the perfect partner, reduced to a disposable obstacle. The betrayal was complete, meticulously planned, and breathtakingly cruel. I allowed myself exactly 10 minutes of breakdown. 10 minutes to feel the full force of the devastation, to let the tears come without restraint. Then I washed my face, made a fresh cup of coffee, and began to think like the strategic partner I'd always been. First, I needed access to Hudson's devices. The phone in his pocket would be impossible to examine without raising suspicion, but the tablet he often left charging in his study might yield information. Hudson, like many successful men, maintained the illusion of security while practicing the laziest form of it, using variations of the same password across accounts. The tablet unlocked on my 3rd attempt, our wedding date followed by his mother's birth year. Inside, his email revealed everything. Draft messages to Sadie outlined their escape plan. Hudson had been systematically moving client funds through a complex series of transfers, preparing for what he called their fresh start. The Blackwell dinner wasn't just a business opportunity. It was to be his final performance before disappearing with nearly $2 million in client funds. The new identities, the property in Costa Rica, the offshore accounts, everything meticulously detailed in correspondence he thought no one would ever see. Most crushing was an email draft addressed to me, scheduled to send the morning after the Blackwell dinner. Alice, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. The firm will be facing some financial irregularities that I've had to leave behind. I'm sorry it ended this way, but we both know our marriage has been just a business arrangement for years. I've found real happiness now and deserve to start over. The house is underwater anyway, you can deal with the bank. The tablet nearly slipped from my hands as I processed the magnitude of his betrayal. Hudson hadn't just planned to leave me. He'd arranged for me to be left holding the bag for his financial crimes. The woman who had built his success would be left to face his creditors, his angry clients, and possible criminal charges while he sipped cocktails on a beach with my replacement. I forwarded everything to my secure email account, careful to delete the sent message and restore the tablet exactly as I'd found it. Then I printed key documents and placed them in a safety deposit box Hudson knew nothing about. The bank manager nodded politely as I completed the paperwork, unaware that I was assembling evidence that would destroy the man whose name I carried. That night, I served Hudson his favorite meal and asked about his day, smiling as he lied about a business meeting I now knew had been a rendezvous with Sadie. As he spoke, I studied his face, the face I'd woken up to for 15 years, and realized I was looking at a stranger. A dangerous stranger who was willing to sacrifice me alongside his professional ethics. The Blackwell dinner is going to change everything for us, he said, raising his wine glass in a toast. For once Hudson and I were in perfect agreement. The Blackwell dinner is going to change everything for us, Hudson had said. He had no idea how right he was. As I cleared the dinner dishes that night, I reflected on the irony of my situation. Most of Hudson's colleagues had no idea that I held a master's degree in financial accounting or that I'd walked away from a promising career at Deloitte to help build Mercer Legal from scratch. The narrative Hudson presented to the world was simple. He was the brilliant legal mind and I was the supportive wife who organized charity luncheons and remembered everyone's children's names. No one knew that I had personally designed the firm's entire financial system, or that I still remotely monitored all account activity through secure access protocols I'd established years ago. Hudson himself had forgotten that I'd set up the original server passwords and administration rights. When the firm hired their first full-time accountant 3 years back, I'd trained him myself but maintained backdoor access, just in case of emergency. The emergency had arrived in the form of a diamond pendant around Sadie's neck and a Costa Rican escape plan. The following morning I began moving in parallel tracks. On the surface I was the perfect corporate wife preparing for the Blackwell dinner, calling caterers, selecting wine pairings and coordinating with the event planner Hudson had insisted we hire to impress these potential clients. Beneath this flawless exterior, I was meticulously documenting every unauthorized transfer Hudson had made over the past 6 months. The flower arrangements need to be impressive but not ostentatious, I explained to the florist on my cell phone while simultaneously using my laptop to download transaction records showing Hudson's gradual siphoning of funds from the client trust accounts. The Blackwells appreciate subtle elegance, not flashy displays. Much like Hudson himself, who had perfected the art of appearing trustworthy while plotting grand theft. By mid-afternoon, I had compiled a comprehensive spreadsheet tracking every diverted dollar. The pattern was clear. Hudson had been testing the waters with small transfers before growing bolder. The most recent transfers were masked as legitimate case expenses but were actually being routed to a holding account before disappearing into the offshore network he'd established. I downloaded everything, saving copies to multiple secure locations. The next step required careful timing. I needed to contact Joseph Winters, the senior partner who had originally mentored Hudson, without raising suspicion. Joseph had semi-retired 2 years earlier but still maintained considerable influence in the firm and the broader legal community. More importantly, his reputation for ethical practice was unimpeachable. "Alice, what a pleasant surprise," Joseph said when I called. "Please tell me Hudson finally convinced you to take that European vacation you've been postponing for years." I laughed, the sound almost natural despite the circumstances. "Not quite yet, Joseph. Actually, I'm calling about the Blackwell dinner. I was hoping Margaret might share her grandmother's chocolate soufflé recipe. I remember how much everyone raved about it at your anniversary party. I'm sure she'd be delighted. Why don't you stop by tomorrow afternoon? Margaret would love to see you, and I've been meaning to discuss something with Hudson about the Patterson case anyway." Perfect. An innocent reason to visit without raising Hudson's suspicions, and an opportunity to plant seeds of concern with the one person whose opinion Hudson truly valued. That evening, I casually mentioned to Hudson that I'd be visiting the Winters the following day. "Margaret's going to share her chocolate soufflé recipe for the Blackwell dinner. Joseph mentioned he wants to discuss the Patterson case with you too. Should I relay anything specific?" Hudson frowned slightly. "Patterson case? That's odd. That matter was settled months ago." I shrugged with practiced nonchalance. "Maybe he's just being nostalgic. You know how he gets about his old cases now that he's semi-retired." "Probably," Hudson agreed, already distracted by his phone. Likely another message from Sadie. "Tell him I'll call him this weekend." A call that would never happen if my timeline proceeded as planned. The next day, I arrived at the Winters' comfortable suburban home with a small gift basket and my most convincing smile. Margaret welcomed me warmly, but I could tell immediately that Joseph had concerns beyond soufflé recipes. "Alice," he said after preliminary pleasantries, "is everything all right with Hudson? With the firm?" I hesitated just long enough to appear conflicted rather than calculated. "What makes you ask that, Joseph?" "Call it an old lawyer's intuition. The Blackwell account is a tremendous opportunity, but Hudson seems unusually urgent about finalizing everything immediately after the dinner. Most corporate clients of that size take weeks to formalize their legal representation." I stirred my tea, allowing my hand to tremble slightly. Hudson's been under a lot of pressure lately. He doesn't share much of the firm's business with me anymore, but I've noticed some changes. What kind of changes? Probably nothing, I said, my voice carefully modulated to suggest it was very much something. He's been working unusual hours, taking calls in private. I'm sure it's just the stress of the Blackwell presentation. Joseph's expression told me he'd taken the bait. The seed of doubt had been planted. Not enough to trigger immediate action, but sufficient to make him receptive when the evidence arrived in his inbox the night of the dinner. On my way home, I stopped at an electronics store and purchased a small but powerful device that would allow me to clone Hudson's work phone when he was sleeping. The tech-savvy college student who sold it to me assured me it would bypass most standard security measures. I also bought a new laptop with cash, one Hudson would never know existed. That night, I worked late in my home office, ostensibly finalizing dinner preparations while actually establishing remote access to every financial account Hudson controlled. I created digital tripwires that would alert me to any large transfers and prepared a series of countercommands that could be executed with a single keystroke. The most challenging part was maintaining my composure during daily interactions with Hudson. Each morning, I prepared his favorite breakfast and listened to his plans for the day, knowing many of them involved Sadie. Each evening, I asked about work while secretly monitoring which client accounts he'd accessed. Each night, I lay beside him in bed, calculating exactly how I would dismantle the life he planned to steal from me. 3 days before the Blackwell dinner, Hudson came home with an expensive bottle of champagne and a rare display of affection. "What's the occasion?" I asked as he poured 2 glasses. "Just appreciating my brilliant wife," he said, clinking his glass against mine. "I couldn't have built any of this without you, Alice. After the Blackwell dinner, I think we should discuss taking that European vacation you've always wanted." I smiled, knowing this would be the last champagne we'd ever share. "That sounds wonderful. I've always wanted to see the world with you." The irony wasn't lost on me. His final manipulation was to make me feel valued just before he planned to discard me. Little did he know that while he plotted his escape with a younger woman, I had already ensured that the only place he'd be going after the Blackwell dinner was financial ruin. The woman behind his money was about to step into the spotlight, and Hudson had no idea his audience was about to witness his final act. The evening of the Blackwell dinner arrived with perfect weather. Clear skies and a gentle breeze that rustled through the Japanese maple trees surrounding the private dining room at Everett's, the most exclusive restaurant in the city. I'd selected everything personally: hand-calligraphed place cards, locally sourced seasonal flowers arranged in understated crystal vases, and a menu that balanced impressive with approachable. The private room glowed with amber lighting that flattered every face, making everyone appear more vibrant, more successful. Looking around as the first guests arrived, I felt a strange calm settle over me. This room represented the culmination of 15 years spent creating the perfect backdrop for Hudson's ambitions. Tonight would be my final performance as the devoted corporate wife, and my debut as the architect of his downfall. I wore a classic black dress with a single strand of pearls Hudson had given me on our 10th anniversary. My makeup was flawless, my hair arranged in a sophisticated updo that had taken 40 minutes to perfect. No one looking at me would suspect that beneath my composed exterior lay a tactical command center. My new phone was tucked into an inner pocket of my clutch, programmed with timed commands set to execute throughout the evening. "Alice, you've outdone yourself," remarked Gregory Blackwell as he entered with his wife, Rebecca. The billionaire industrialist looked exactly as his magazine profiles suggested: silver-haired, fitness-obsessed, and perpetually evaluating everyone around him for potential value. "Hudson promised us an exceptional evening, but this is remarkable." "You're too kind," I replied, taking Rebecca's hand warmly. "Hudson and I believe that attention to detail reflects how we approach everything in life." I caught his eye meaningfully. "Including client relationships." Hudson appeared at my side, clapping Gregory on the shoulder with practiced familiarity. "Greg, I see you've met the secret weapon of Mercer Legal. Alice makes everything look effortless." "A woman's touch makes all the difference," Rebecca commented, accepting a champagne flute from a passing server. I smiled, knowing none of them realized just how much of a difference my touch would make tonight. More guests arrived. The senior partners from Hudson's firm with their spouses, key executives from Blackwell Industries, and a few strategic connections Hudson had insisted on including. Joseph Winters entered last, his shrewd eyes taking in the room before settling on me with a slight nod. He knew something was coming, he just didn't know what. As cocktail hour progressed, I excused myself to check on dinner arrangements, and slipped into the restaurant's private office that the manager had allowed me to use for last-minute coordination. There, I activated the first phase of my plan. With a few taps on my hidden phone, I initiated transfers canceling Hudson's elaborate network of offshore movements. Another series of commands sent evidence packages to the inboxes of every partner in the firm, scheduled to arrive precisely as dessert was being served. I rejoined the party as Hudson was holding court with the Blackwells, regaling them with a story about a particularly challenging case. And that's when I realized the precedent from the 1998 Harmon decision could be applied. It completely transformed our approach. What Hudson failed to mention was that I had discovered that precedent during one of my all-night research sessions early in our marriage. I'd woken him at 3 a.m. excited by the finding, only to have him present it as his own breakthrough in court the next day. "Fascinating approach," Gregory commented. "Your analytical skills are impressive." "Hudson has always had an eye for overlooked details," I added pleasantly, sipping my sparkling water. "It's one of his many talents." Hudson shot me a curious look, perhaps detecting something unusual in my tone. I raised my glass slightly before turning to answer a question from Rebecca about the wine selection. As we moved to the dining table, Hudson took his position at the head with Gregory Blackwell to his right. I sat at the opposite end, the perfect hostess overseeing the service. The first course arrived, a delicate seared scallop with citrus reduction that drew appreciative murmurs from around the table. Halfway through the main course of herb-crusted lamb, I excused myself once more, ostensibly to ensure the dessert preparation was on schedule. In reality, I was confirming that my digital tripwires remained undetected. Hudson had attempted to access the offshore accounts twice during dinner, his face betraying nothing as his phone discreetly informed him of access errors. I could almost see the rising panic behind his practiced smile. When I returned to the dining room, a commotion at the entrance caught everyone's attention. The maitre d' was attempting to block someone from entering our private space. A woman's voice, insistent, slightly slurred, carried over his polite objections. "I know he's in there. Hudson Mercer. I need to speak with him right now." My heart raced, but my expression remained placid as Sadie pushed past the flustered staff member and stumbled into our carefully orchestrated dinner. She wore the diamond pendant prominently displayed against a dress too revealing for the venue. Her makeup was smudged, her eyes wild with what appeared to be a cocktail of anger and fear. "Hudson," she cried, spotting him. "Why aren't you answering my calls? Something's wrong with the accounts." The room fell silent. Hudson froze, fork suspended midway to his mouth as every head turned from Sadie to him. I could practically hear the professional relationships cracking in the silence. "I'm sorry," Hudson finally managed, standing slowly. "This is a misunderstanding. This woman is. She's a client who's clearly distressed. If you'll excuse me for just a moment." "A client?" Sadie's laugh was harsh. "Is that what we're calling it? Tell them, Hudson. Tell them about Costa Rica and how you promised we'd leave after this dinner." Gregory Blackwell's expression hardened as he carefully placed his napkin beside his plate. "Hudson, what exactly is happening here?" "It's nothing, Greg. A misunderstanding. If you'll excuse me for just a moment to handle this." Hudson grabbed Sadie's arm, pulling her toward the hallway, his face a mask of controlled fury. I timed my next move perfectly, waiting until dessert, Margaret Winter's famous chocolate soufflé, was being served. As the waitstaff presented the delicate creations, phones began buzzing around the table. Every partner was simultaneously receiving the evidence of Hudson's systematic theft. Joseph Winters looked at his phone, then at me, his expression grim with confirmation of his suspicions. Hudson returned alone, his complexion ashen, just as Gregory Blackwell was scanning through the documents on his phone. The timing couldn't have been more perfect if I'd choreographed it. "Hudson," Gregory said coldly, "I think this dinner is concluded. Greg, whatever you've received I can explain." "I sincerely doubt that," Gregory interrupted, standing. "Rebecca, we're leaving. Alice, thank you for a lovely meal under the circumstances." As the Blackwells departed, Hudson frantically pulled out his credit card to settle the exorbitant bill, desperate to maintain some semblance of control. The waiter returned moments later, leaning to whisper in Hudson's ear, but loud enough for those remaining to hear. "I'm sorry, sir. Your card has been declined." Hudson fumbled for another card, then another. Each was declined with the same apologetic murmur from the staff. His face flushed deep red, then drained to a sickly white as he realized what was happening. "Alice," he managed through clenched teeth. "A word." But it was too late. Joseph Winters stepped forward, phone in hand. "Hudson, the partners have convened an emergency call. Your access to all firm accounts has been suspended pending investigation." Hudson's scream of rage as the full impact of his situation dawned on him was indeed the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. The sound of justice served on a silver platter at the dinner he'd planned as his grand finale. Hudson's rage-filled scream echoed through the now silent private dining room as the remaining partners exchanged uncomfortable glances. He lunged toward me, his composed lawyer facade completely shattered. "What have you done?" he hissed, gripping the edge of the table so hard his knuckles turned white. "You think you're clever? You have no idea what you've just started." "Actually, Hudson," I replied, my voice steady despite my racing heart, "I've just ended what you started." I turned to face the stunned faces around the table. "Gentlemen, I believe you've received some troubling information about the firm's finances. I can answer any questions you might have." Joseph Winters stepped forward, positioning himself slightly between Hudson and me in a protective gesture that brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "Alice," he said gravely, "these documents suggest a systematic theft of client funds over the past 6 months. You compiled this evidence?" "Yes." I opened my clutch and withdrew a small USB drive. "This contains the complete documentation, including recorded transfers, falsified expense reports, and correspondence regarding offshore accounts. I've been managing the firm's financial systems since its founding. When I noticed irregularities, I investigated." The 3 remaining partners huddled together, speaking in hushed tones while Hudson watched with growing panic. I could see the moment when realization dawned on him, how completely his world was collapsing, how thoroughly I had outmaneuvered him. "You can't prove anything," Hudson snarled, regaining some of his legal composure. "Any decent lawyer will tear your amateur investigation apart." Thomas Green, the youngest partner and Hudson's former protégé, looked up from his phone. "The State Bar Association has already been notified, Hudson. And your girlfriend just caused quite a scene in the restaurant lobby before security escorted her out. She was rather explicit about your relationship and plans." Hudson's face contorted with fury. "This is ridiculous. Alice is my wife. She has no authority to access firm accounts or client information. Everything she's done is illegal." I smiled for the first time that evening, no longer needing to maintain my perfect wife facade. "Actually, I've been an authorized administrator on all firm accounts since inception. Check the paperwork, Hudson. You signed it yourself during our first year. You were too busy to bother with administrative details then." The look of dawning horror on his face was almost comical. "You never removed my access," I continued. "And as for authority, I haven't done anything but observe and document. You're the one who stole client funds." The restaurant manager appeared, clearly uncomfortable. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but we need to settle the bill for tonight's event." Joseph Winters wordlessly handed over his credit card, his eyes never leaving Hudson. "I believe we should continue this discussion at the office immediately." As the remaining partners escorted Hudson out, his protests growing increasingly desperate, I remained seated, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried me through weeks of planning and this dramatic evening began to ebb, leaving me hollow. "Are you coming, Alice?" Joseph asked gently. "In a moment," I replied. "I need to thank the staff." After the room emptied, I sat alone at the table that had cost more than my first car to reserve, surveying the half-eaten desserts and abandoned wine glasses. The wreckage of dinner mirrored the wreckage of my marriage. Beautiful on the surface, destroyed underneath. I followed the partners to the firm 30 minutes later, having composed myself for the final act. The conference room atmosphere was frigid when I arrived. Hudson sat isolated at one end of the table, while the partners and their hastily summoned attorney occupied the other end. "Mrs. Mercer," the firm's attorney began, This is highly irregular, but given the circumstances. It's Miss Callahan, I interrupted, reclaiming my maiden name for the first time in 15 years. And there's nothing irregular about protecting client assets from theft. For the next 2 hours, I methodically walked them through Hudson's elaborate scheme, highlighting how he had planned to disappear with millions in client funds after the Blackwell dinner. With each revelation, Hudson seemed to physically shrink, his bravado replaced by grim resignation. What surprised me most was Margaret Winters arriving halfway through my presentation, followed by Diane Green and Patricia Foster, the wives of the other partners. They slipped into seats along the wall, watching with expressions ranging from shock to something that looked remarkably like admiration. When the initial crisis meeting concluded at nearly 2 a.m., Hudson was escorted from the building by security, his key cards and access revoked. The partners immediately initiated emergency protocols to protect remaining client funds and prepare for the inevitable legal and public relations nightmare. Margaret approached me in the hallway as I gathered my things. "We're having breakfast tomorrow at my house. 9 a.m. You should join us." "I'm not sure that would be appropriate given everything." I gestured vaguely at the chaos around us. "Alice," she said firmly, "for 15 years I've watched you build this firm alongside Joseph. The same goes for Diane and Patricia with their husbands. We know exactly what it means to be the invisible foundation. It's time we talked about it." 9 o'clock. The breakfast meeting proved to be a turning point I never anticipated. Over coffee and scones in Margaret's sunlit kitchen, I found myself surrounded by women who understood exactly what I'd experienced. They shared their own stories of unacknowledged contributions, of expertise dismissed as helping out, of careers sacrificed for their husbands' ambitions. "The difference," Diane pointed out, "is that you kept records and maintained your access." That was brilliant. "Survival instinct," I admitted. I never truly trusted that Hudson saw me as an equal partner. "None of them do," Patricia said quietly. "But that doesn't mean we can't use our skills elsewhere." The conversation that morning planted a seed that would take root over the difficult months that followed. While Hudson faced disbarment proceedings and criminal charges, I navigated my own legal challenges. Our divorce was expedited given the circumstances, and I declined alimony in exchange for keeping our home and my restored maiden name. The criminal investigation revealed that Hudson had been more desperate than calculated. He'd accumulated gambling debts alongside funding his affair with Sadie, who quickly disappeared from his life when the money dried up. The man I'd thought I knew had been unraveling for longer than I realized, his perfect facade hiding multiple destructive secrets. 6 months after the Blackwell dinner, I sat across from a commercial real estate agent, signing a lease for a modest office space downtown. Callahan Financial Forensics would specialize in detecting fraud and financial mismanagement for law firms and small businesses. My first 3 clients were already lined up, arranged through a discreet referral network that Margaret, Diane and Patricia had helped establish among their considerable social connections. On opening day, a stunning flower arrangement arrived from Joseph Winters with a note that simply read, "Credit finally where credit is due." As I arranged my new business cards on my desk, Alice Callahan, I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago, invisibly managing Hudson's world while he planned my disposal. The journey from there to here had been painful, but as I looked around at the office that bore my name, I finally felt the sweet satisfaction of reclaiming my worth. No longer the silent partner, I had found my voice, and discovered it was worth listening to after all.